What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Hey, man, y'all done did it again. Tuning in for an episode of All Truth No Chaser. You know we on that Instagram, so make sure you give your boy a follow. That's All Truth _ No Chaser. All Truth _ No Chaser. I sure do appreciate you. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. Share this with your peoples. You heard? So I'm telling you, I got a great story for y'all today. So I hope y'all ready. Put your seatbelts on and let's just get into it. It's peculiar, right? Because the Bible talks about how Christ is here for the church, and the church is people, and we supposed to love the peoples. So in our society, we dictate church as a house, a building, etc. So when you are a man and you got your house, your building, that's your church, and you have to control the atmosphere, the temperature, inside your church because that's what you the Lord over. Lord over in the biblical sense, not like, dictate. That's not what I'm saying. But what happens, which we don't see a lot of, is when dads or men come into a marriage as the with no kids as the bonus dad. And so today, in this dynamic of fatherhood, I'm very excited because I don't make friends easy. I don't make them easy. It is that's my own traumas that I'm telling you, we processed this out together as a community. But because of my little one being at this Montessori school, she ended up befriending a little girl and they're tied to the hip even to this day, years later. And that baby's daddy just happens to be one of my best friends. Hey, everybody, in your cars, wherever you listen to, just give me a nice little round of applause. Say, hi, Alan. Hi, Alan. Hi, Alan. Hi, Alan.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
All right. So the reason I asked him to come on because his story, when he met his wife, she did have already a child. And I was very curious because hopefully we're going to unpack some of this today. And this is a safe space, so nobody got to be tripping here because we don't know what's going to unfold. But to talk about his journey from not having any kids to meeting a lady with a child and the things that unfolded with that journey and just where he is today. And I really feel like so many of us will be able to connect to this side of the story because mostly we hear about women getting with the guy with the kids. At least that was my story. And so with his story, we're going to be able to really unpack that. And I'm super.
Say y'all started yet?
Well, yes, that's his wife. That she's so embarrassed right now. Yes, we did start. Thank you.
Come on in and say hello.
She already said hello. Oh, that is so funny. So that is great. So, Alan, man. So first things first, brother. When you met your wife and you knew she had a child, what was going through your mind?
Well, first off, when I met my wife, I didn't know anything about her. I just saw her and was immediately drawn to her.
Yeah.
We worked in the same building. We worked for the same company, and it was one of her first days. And one of the guys that I was mentoring at the time was showing her around and brought her over to my office and wasn't quite paying attention at first, but when I spun around from my chair and I noticed she was there, it was almost an instant connection. And I immediately went to somebody else that I knew that was in the office that kind of had a better lay of the land and knew more people around the office that could give me some background on her. And that was when I learned who she was, where she was in the office, and a little bit about her story. And
so you were doing investigative
I
work.
had to do some investigative reporting, and through that investigation.
Who this girl over here?
Yeah.
Who? Hey.
I saw her, and like I said, there was an instant connection, and like I said, did some investigative reporting, and I found out that she did have a child, and I couldn't ignore the connection.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's peculiar, right? Because I think for our lady listeners, when I tell you, we know there's no, if a guy's giving you any kind of shim about whether or not he want to be with you, or he got to figure things out and this, that, and the other. One thing I'm gonna tell you off top. For me, I knew immediately that, and I didn't even see my wife. I heard her voice, and I was like, "Yo." I'm instantly like moving my head around trying to find that frequency of her voice that she was speaking on the hunt, right? And I am a firm believer that we know immediately if somebody is that one.
That one. And in this case, I knew that she was that one. But I did try to rationalize certain elements of the situation, and because of what we're talking about today, I think it's important that I mention that I tried to rationalize and really think about the decision to pursue somebody that had a child, and it did play a role in my decision to listen to God. I think I've heard a couple of your episodes already, and you say this thing more often than once or twice, in that if you're trying to control God's plan, you're already losing.
Oh yeah, you try. Yeah.
I was trying to control God's plan.
Yeah,
I was like, nah, that's not God's plan for me. I had a list of things that I felt like was appropriate to desire as a single black man, in Atlanta at the time, with a good job and quote unquote good job, quote unquote good family, blah blah blah. And I thought that having a partner that didn't have children was for me, so that we could write that story together.
Yeah,
from
follow.
And it wasn't until my mother visited me down in Atlanta, and she asked me, my mother and I are close, just put that out there. So we talk about generally just about everything. And she asked me what was going on with the dating situation. Had I found anybody that I liked, or anybody that I was considering, or was I introducing her to anybody on this trip? And I said, no, not really. And then my mind went to Claudia, who's my wife, and I said, well, here's this one person, and I really like her. And I went to describing all of her wonderful qualities, how intelligent she was, how beautiful she was, how connected to God she was, and how much we laughed when we were together. But I said, Mom, look, she's got a son, and that's not really what I had planned. That's not what I had in mind. And she said, after a pause, where would I be if somebody said that about me? I would have missed out on having somebody of your quality, of your caliber. Mom is always your number one fan.
Right.
If she's doing it right, and she definitely is. And, she said, where would I be if somebody of your quality, of your caliber, wouldn't approach me because of you? And, you think I'm pretty good. I said, well, you're right. She said, if she's worth your time, pursue it and see what happens. Nobody says it's got to end in marriage, but, don't let the fact that she has a son deter you from what could potentially be your destiny.
Yeah. So you pursue it, y'all hang out, y'all go on dates, and now you're at this position to where you say, I'm going to pop the question. You pop the question. You say, I do. She says, I do. You guys don't have any kids at the time. In your mind, are you saying, and even like just to kind of, fast forward it a little bit, are you feeling like, okay, now I have to figure out how to be a daddy real quick? Because when you're not there for the inception, you're not there for the 9 months in the belly, you're not there for the first, you're not there for any of that. Because at the time, how old was he when you guys got married?
Shane is my bonus son, and he is 18 now, and he was 9 going on 10 or 10 when we got married.
Right.
Yeah.
So he already has some kind of idea about his surroundings. So are you in this position to where now you're like trying to fill shoes to be his dad?
No, because as I mentioned before, I'm a son of divorce, and my mother had remarried. Is now divorced. My father remarried, is still married, and so I've been a bonus kid in 2 instances, and I know what it looks like to impede on somebody's relationship with their natural parent, especially if that natural parent is present and active
Yeah.
in the child's life.
So
And so that was never my goal. My goal was always to be somebody that he could look up to, somebody that he could talk to, somebody that he could count on, somebody that was an example of how to treat a woman by the way that I treated his mother.
and what you're talking about is space.
Yeah.
You gave him space, and that's important because when you're going into any new territory, right? You never want to go into a territory like to take over, because you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose. But if you go into that territory and you decide to, when I say create space, that doesn't mean like distance.
No.
That means like you're giving that person that space to kind of
Organically mature into a relationship.
exactly.
Start off in a friendship. Start off.
Not trying to force it.
Yeah, start off with the intention of
Right.
building a bond, but not forcing a bond. Get to a place where we are family, and we can conceivably count on each other.
Right, right. And in regards to Shane's dad, did you sit down with him? Did you like talk with him? And like, what was that like?
Yeah.
Was there any like flexing, machismo, alpha male, rah rah rah?
No, I can honestly say, excuse me, not on my part. I came into the situation, feeling humbled to be a part of it. He had a working relationship with his father. I think, his relationship, Shane's father's relationship with my wife was fractured. But by all accounts, the relationship between Shane and his father was strong.
Right.
And so my position, I felt, was to respect that and reach out to him and, introduce myself. We're talking about, being states and states apart, miles and miles apart. So the opportunity for a face-to-face interaction, a shaking of the hand, that just wasn't on the table. But I did have his number, so I could give him a call.
Yeah.
And I attempted to give him a call, and I left him a message, and I didn't press it. But I just wanted him to know that, his son, my now wife, they were coming to live with me, and I wanted to, introduce myself and,
Yeah.
make my presence felt, and, let him know that I was an ally in this co-parenting situation. And, unfortunately, he didn't reach right back immediately. And when he did reach back, it was in hostility.
Yeah.
And, I remember Claudia and Shane, I flew from Houston to Atlanta to move them from Atlanta to Houston. And I went to, pick up all of their things, and, we had a couple of pets, and so it was a huge caravan. It was a big deal. And I remember walking through Hartsfield International Airport in Atlanta to get in the car to go to, Claudia's then house in Atlanta. And I remember walking through that corridor and intentionally taking the long way, because I felt as soon as I got in that car, my life was going to be completely different, and that in some ways it wasn't going to belong to me anymore.
Yeah.
And I got in the car.
Now, this is before you guys got married?
This is before we got married.
Okay.
Correct. And I just remember feeling that things were going to be different. I couldn't measure by how much and by what, but I just knew they were going to be different. And so we fast forward then from that moment to the moment where, Claudia and Shane have now moved in to my place here in Houston, and suddenly my phone rings, and Claudia's away on business, Shane and I are at home, and I don't remember specifically what the issue was or why it devolved into the situation that it did, but it devolved, and it devolved quickly. He called, and he was really upset behind the fact that, we hadn't had a conversation, even though I reached out.
Right.
And that reach out wasn't reciprocated. I wasn't going to chase him down.
Right.
So he was upset about that. He was upset.
But you gave him the respect due.
Yeah.
You, and I think that's important too, because sometimes our egos get in the way of proper progress. Or some people feel like, because you said the first time when he did reach out, this was hostile. Was this the moment you're talking about? The first time
This was the very first time I ever spoke with him.
Okay, so yeah, so what we... Okay,
phone.
Unfold it.
He's calling from California, which is where he's from, and, where Shane was born. And I'm in Houston with Shane on a school night, and theoretically Shane is in his room asleep. It's after hours, and he proceeds to go off about, I don't know where my son is, I don't have your address, I don't know who you are, I wasn't expecting Claudia to get married. And, it got live. And there was a moment during that conversation where I wanted to snap back. And I wanted to get on his level. And forego that high road that we often talk about, and just, like I say, get with him. But I just listened to him, and he got so agitated by that.
Because you were listening to him?
Because I was listening to him, and I was responding in a way that wasn't agitated.
Yeah.
And I was trying to make it clear that I wasn't there to fill his shoes.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately what the conversation distilled down to, was my position as his now bonus father.
Because it can feel like from his position, and I think I'm happy you said that you did not match the energy. Because if the minute you start matching energy of somebody else, you have now erased any pathways of creating communication. And then he can take whatever you said, however you would have said it, even if it was true, but because you matched the machismo as like a chink in your armor. But his anger was probably coming from the position of feeling like this man wants to take my kid away. Like, that's where it's like, where is this energy coming from? Yeah. Especially if he's not present, he's not there, and he did get the message, and now he's upset with his own self because he could have called you back, but chose not to. But things continue to progress, unbeknownst to him. Like, oh, this is serious than I assumed it was.
Because I don't think he took it seriously.
Yeah, he did.
I think that was part of it.
He probably just some F-boy.
He looked up and his former partner and his son have now moved
To a whole nother state,
to a whole other state and have started this whole.
and he's asking himself, what does this mean for me?
And also, I put myself in his shoes as a father to two other kids, between my wife and I, and how I would feel about that.
But you didn't have kids at the time.
I didn't. But now I do.
But that creates that empathy,
and I
right?
think there's empathy for sure, because I can think that immediately I would be on edge if my kids, heaven forbid something happened to my wife and I, and she remarried, and one day I'm getting a message that, there's somebody in the picture that would like to talk to me, and the next message I get is that they're not married and they've moved in and they're starting a family, and
because you're putting an imprint. Somebody else is putting an imprint on yours.
Exactly, and I don't know this person.
Yeah,
and they're gonna be around my kid a lot, and that scares me.
That is scary.
And I can honestly say that, it was part of it was, this guy's gonna be here, and I don't like this position that he is in with my kid. But it's also scary that I don't really know who he is.
On top of
that.
Yeah. So you guys, as that heated conversation, like, what was the outcome of that?
The conversation got to a point where it was no longer productive for either of us.
Yeah.
It got to the point where he was unintentionally cursing about his own son. That's how spitting mad this cat got. Like,
since you're not gonna give me the energy out, because it's almost like he was trying to provoke you to get a response.
Yeah.
And we see that, right, when people that want to start a fight.
Yeah.
You want to, and because I'm not helping you in the matter, now you so mad, you just mad.
All of a sudden, the son that he was calling to defend and protect was a little MFer. And I'm like, okay. See, I don't think you just realized what you just said. You just called him a little MFer, and I don't think that's what you meant to say. No, I didn't say that. I'm like, well, okay.
And I think
we're at a point where this conversation is no longer productive.
Yeah, and it's important, fellas, like when we have kids, if we're going to be in a relationship, and I've said it, and I'm going to say it again, if you're going to have a child, that child is your responsibility, whether that child is in your house, not in your house, or whatever. And the ultimate goal always has to be the betterment of the child. Even if that betterment, in some regards, I don't want to say at the expense of yourself, but I will say you do have to give of yourself. And if you're not giving of yourself and somebody else wants to pick up that job, if somebody else wants to do that, just be supportive, because it's not about you, it's not about your feelings, because there's nothing worse than to see somebody wanting or desiring to do the job that you're not willing to do, and then you get sensitive about it. Like, we have to be, when we have children, we have to be active components at all times, and it's never too late to do that. Okay, I just wanted to slide that in there. So, you and Claudia are doing well. Well, you guys are married. You're a bonus dad.
And at this time, I gotta add that our relationship is pretty good.
It's good.
The relationship between Shane and I is pretty good.
Okay, so when the relationship between you and Shane started to shift, was that when she got pregnant? Did you feel like there was a change?
There was a shift in Shane, for sure, but I don't know that it was our relationship that shifted at that point.
Yeah.
We were pregnant with our daughter Anaya pretty early on in our marriage. We didn't waste much time with that piece.
Yeah.
It wasn't planned. We felt blessed by it. We felt like it was on time, but it certainly wasn't planned.
Right.
And I think that timing really impacted the flow of what we were talking about earlier, the organic development of our bond.
It didn't get it. It didn't get a chance to take root.
It didn't get a chance to take root.
Right.
He didn't get an opportunity to feel grounded in our new situation, our new family.
To say like this is genuine
And I
my
respect.
family.
I can honestly say, as an adult looking back in hindsight, I respect that. But like
Yeah.
I said, it wasn't planned. Blessed certainly, but it wasn't planned. And I think that led to what eventually happened next. And what eventually happened next was we had a showdown in LAX when it came down to picking him up that summer from his father's. We had an arrangement where he stayed with us for the majority of the year. He spent holidays and summers in California with his father. It was by court order. As I said, the relationship between his father and he was always strong, and in some ways, outside looking in, manipulative.
Yeah. As far as like when it comes to you and how you're processing this information, did you feel like you were overwhelmed? Did you feel like
Overwhelmed by what specifically?
Overwhelmed by, now I have this bonus child of mine. I have this child that I'm responsible for. How did you feel like you were getting the support you needed to be a bonus dad?
I absolutely felt overwhelmed from that perspective. I did. Carpool was brand new to me. I was taking a kid to school now. I had an instant family basically.
Yeah.
Homework was a thing.
Because you didn't get to grow into it.
Yeah. And then, as it goes, the bonus part, I still had this other relationship, which was, as I'm attempting to describe, piping hot on the side.
Yeah.
And I'm building a new marriage with the woman that I love. We've now found out we're adding to our family. Nothing to do with it, but at the time I was in the midst of a layoff. So there was just it was like the perfect storm of shit. Like as soon as things started to look good, that's as quickly as they devolved into smelling like doo-doo.
Yeah.
And I did. I felt overwhelmed and I felt burdened, and I think that was the beginning of the wall, the theoretical wall that can be built between two people when you don't know how to communicate right. And I'm talking about two people. I'm talking about my wife and I.
So and the thing about marriage, right? And I'm probably gonna have to do an episode just to kind of talk about why marriage is hard, but why marriage is equally as rewarding. Because marriage really is a big old mirror.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we argue with our reflection. But that's not what we're going to talk about. So
no.
So you say
I got a thing or two to say on that. When you're looking at the reflection, you're like, and you understand the concept that you're talking about. When you understand that your spouse is a reflection of you, and you're like, I don't look like that.
but
well, at least I don't like the idea.
But we don't want to go down that road. We don't want to go down that road. We don't want to go down that road. So
but yes, there was.
So you have. So you have. Here you are as a man, right? We pride ourselves on being providers. We pride ourselves on being fix-its. We can fix it. We provide ourselves on just we're quote unquote we can keep the peace. But now you have your mental warfare that is going on because if I lose my job, that's also it can feel as if you also lost your manhood identity. And now you have your son that you're trying to be an example for, but that can also be challenged if you don't have a job, because now I'm not providing. And is my wife gonna really love me if I ain't got the job? It's like how are you navigating that?
I can honestly say I made the mistake of, because I was so new at the game of marriage, I made the mistake of not telling my wife first that I was afraid, which is what it boiled down to, if I'm being honest. I was afraid because I was experiencing something that I'd never experienced in my life, and that being a head of household and being faced with the news that in a couple of months, what you know for sure is no longer a certainty. You got 2 months to get your house in order, and this job is no longer, basically. And so I was grateful for that runway, provided by my employer then, but I was in panic mode. And so
So you were allowing your pride to prevent you from humbling to yourself, to your wife, to express how you genuinely were feeling.
I don't think I looked at it as pride.
Okay.
I think I was genuinely afraid and just like misdirected, because I was a younger man adopting a new family, and my wife is
don't come with no playbook.
A little older than me. It doesn't come with a playbook. Marriage don't come with a playbook, and parenthood certainly
Don't come with a playbook.
And so I was standing there, and I remember after getting the news, going to the parking garage, and standing next to my car, and looking up to the sky, and saying to God, "Well, what we gonna do now?" I said it out loud.
Yeah.
I'm like, "You got us into this, man. What we gonna do now?" And because of my relationship with my sister, I chose to call her first, because I thought that she would be able to provide me with some sort of comfort, some sort of insight, some sort of
ideas.
idea.
Yeah.
So I called her first, and I talked to her, and she's like, "Ooh, okay." And so we rapped about it for a little bit, and she said, "Well, you obviously got to go home, and you obviously got to talk about it. Do you want to come to my house first and have a drink about it and have a think about it?
But have a beverage."
And I said, "I think I better go home and do my drink and think, because if I
don't know how far down this bottle I'm gonna get.
I don't know how far down the bottle I'm gonna get." Exactly. So I go home, and I talk to Claudia about it, and she couldn't have been more supportive.
That's a load off, isn't it?
It's a load off.
Because I mean, it lets you know when you have, the world can feel like it's crumbling in, but when you go to that person that's supposed to be your safe space, and then they show you in that moment that they actually really are your safe space, it's like you've been holding your breath for 10 months, and now you can let it. Oh, this is gonna be all right.
Yeah.
This is gonna be all right.
Yeah.
And I think us as men, we don't execute that enough. We just hold the world up. When you pushing heavy weight, they tell you to breathe, right? But a lot of times we just don't release it. And if we don't release it to our safe space, we don't release it to the core people that we know genuinely care about us holistically.
Right.
We don't release it. And
I don't always trust it.
And it can be hard, because now it's like I have to show this,
because of whatever's happening.
fragility.
You don't trust it, and you're afraid, like you said, to show the fragility of the reality of your situation.
Yeah. So you guys evolve. You have Shane's going back and forth. Clearly, there's some messaging that is different that he's getting in your house. The messaging that he's getting when he's in his other house. And the issue with different messaging is that when said child lives 80% in a different residence, but getting different messaging somewhere else, unfortunately, the child is the one trying to figure out which one of these messagings do I want to listen to.
You can't be convicted in confusion.
You just can't. So, like, well, over here I can, and over here I can't. And that for the child is not good.
Yeah.
Even the Bible talks about, father, don't be out here confusing your kids.
Yeah.
And You got two dads,
Mm-hmm.
a bonus dad, biological dad, and this kid that's in the middle trying to figure out, well, who am I supposed to listen to? I know who I want to listen to. I want to listen to my biological dad in this case because clearly there's some messaging over here that I might lean to. Like, how are you managing the different messaging? How does the mom help in that?
I naively took on the thought process of, well, I'm in control of what happens in my house. Me and me alone. All that other outside noise, it don't matter. If he's going to go into that environment and receive that messaging, it'll have to be left at the door. Period. More like comma. Because after you make that statement, you then have to be prepared for what comes next. And you don't get a period. You don't get a break. It flows right into the next situation. As much as you'd like to have that left outside the door, it can't be because of the level of influence that, in this case, Shane's father has on his thinking, on his idealist reality. It's a non-starter.
And that's not
in your
uncommon.
house.
And it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon, like, for the kid to lean
Look,
towards. That's not uncommon.
I thought all that stuff from movies and TV, well, my dad can, and my dad does, and this is how he does it. But he said, I thought that was all on TV and movies. No, this is
real life,
reality.
Yeah.
I'm like, on one hand, you're like, okay, all right. We're talking, we're bonding. Last thing I want to do is shut down this kid because he clearly is missing his father and he wants to talk about him.
Normal.
And he's obviously looked up to this man and is going to compare the other men and even the man that he is to that man.
Normal.
I'm going to go with it. Now, the reality is, this shit gets a little annoying.
Normal.
But what are you going to do?
He's a child.
And so,
and you want to give him that space to communicate.
Give him the space
to communicate.
Because, but up to this point, for all intents and purposes, he's a good kid settling into what is now his life.
And that comparison should not be perceived as negative.
No, I don't think it was.
Now for you, you're like, hey, if this dude cut it out. But that's what you have to manage.
Yeah.
This kid is just, because kids talk.
Yeah.
They just talking.
Yeah.
Aimlessly.
Yeah.
Talking.
Yeah. They're just aimlessly talking. And I would listen, and I think that I began to become numb to it. And I began to kind of get a kick out of it. And I would kind of play with them a little bit, say, well, can he do this?
Yeah.
And then bust a move that was completely ridiculous.
Wait, so y'all were doing
And we
that
were laughing
loving
about it.
Basketball in the front yard? My daddy learned karate from ISIS. Can he do this?
Yeah. I just began to have fun with it, man, because I could start to see the relationship developing between he and I knew that if I just stuck with it, it wouldn't be long before we would have our own thing. It wouldn't change the thing that he had with his father, but we would have our own thing, and the comparison would fall away. Then ideally, he would take the best of both of us and become the man that we both hoped, his father and I,
By being an example.
that we wanted him to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so during that time period, in your quiet time, how are you managing it? Like, what's going on with you psychologically?
So there began to be an issue with communication between Shane's father and my wife. Communication had already been, like I said, fractured and frayed, but conceivably because of the trajectory that her life was taking on now, it was getting worse. And it became a bit more malicious and a bit more intentional. And what I'm talking about is his desire to be present in our marriage and the inevitability of his presence in our marriage. And so what happens is this is weighing on Claudia's mind. His presence and what he's going to do next with respect to custody of their son together.
Oh, so you're saying the dad was trying to weaponize Shane to have an impact on what's happening over here.
And, and to be fair and honest, this had been an ongoing battle between the two of them even prior to us getting married. There had been a period of respite, but any perceived break was only temporary.
Yeah.
And very brief.
Typically we see those type of characteristics. You see it on the other side where a woman wants to weaponize the child. It's not every day you hear about a male doing that. But while that's happening, right, you're on the outside.
I'm on the outside.
And with you standing on the outside, what position are you taking?
I'm taking the position of, look, he very clearly wants to establish himself as his father, and I don't think he understands that, and this is me talking to Claudia, I don't think he understands that you nor I have the desire to take that from him. Anything that we do in the interest of Shane and Shane only. And I look at it through an empathetic lens and say, that's what his position is as his father. Through an empathetic lens, I say that his father's position was, I got to get my son back. I got to get him here. And I got to do it by any means necessary. So that's what I mean when I say malicious.
Yeah.
The maliciousness came with intent. Good intent, that good intent being to have the primary responsibility for his son, to have him there for the school year, and have us get, the peppered holidays and, maybe a little bit of the summer. And if I put my empathetic lenses on, it was because he felt like his environment was better. I think there are other points of view. I think there might be points of view that he was just trying to stick it to my wife, that he wanted to take control of the situation, and some of that may be true and may have played a part. But from my lens, if I put my dad hat on, it's because I think I know what's best for my son.
Yeah,
and
that's
I want
normal
him
too.
back, and I'll do whatever I need to do to get him back.
Yeah.
So what I see now is a manipulation between Shane and his father, to the point where, case in point, we throw Shane a birthday party here in Houston, and by all accounts, Shane has the time of his life.
Right.
I mean, busting a gut, laughing his butt off, verbally articulating to my wife and I. Yeah, he was like, I just met these kids and I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for this is the best birthday I've had in a long time.
Yeah.
Was literally what he said. We took him, paintballing, and I had friends that had kids as well, and they, brought their kids, and we all had a really good time. And at the end of that, I was like, man, that was such a good time. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
And later that day, he gets a call from his father, and he asks him, well, what did you do for your birthday today? Did you guys do anything special? No, not really. I can't believe this is such a bad day. I can't believe we didn't do anything. We did something. We did some paintball with some of Alan's friends, but that wasn't that fun.
Yeah.
and it kind of cut a
You.
little bit because I could overhear the conversation.
Yeah.
And that was like my first glimpse at the duplicity of who he had to be as an 8-9-year-old
Trying to balance,
child.
trying to balance his
Trying to
emotions.
balance his emotions.
And I guess, fellas, we have to ask ourselves, like, is that fair? You know, hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for new parents, for old parents, and what I mean, like, when I say new parents, like, you got a baby. Old parents have been in the game 10, 15 years, you know. But we never want to put our kids in a position to where they feel as though they have to do the managing of emotion.
And that was what was happening. Very clearly, that was what was happening. And it made Claudia and I both think, what's happening that we're not aware of that puts him in this position where he feels like he has to be honest about having a good time on his birthday with us.
Yeah. As you and Claudia, you guys end up having two beautiful, amazing kids. Now you have two babies.
Mm-hmm.
When Papicito was born, was there a bigger shift between now it just so happens that Shane is outnumbered here through siblings 2-1. You know, did you feel as if you had to work harder to make sure he felt that he still understood that his position is still the prince of the house?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, the year that my daughter and I was born, Shane went back to California for the summer and didn't come back to Houston. Claudia and I flew out to California to pick him up, as was instructed by the court order, like I mentioned before. And in the process of the handoff, things went completely left. Police were involved. We ended up having to have an emergency court hearing that took place over the course of 3 days. Now, mind you, my wife is 9 months pregnant at this point with our daughter, and was really one of the only reasons why I joined her on this trip, because typically it's fly into LAX, grab Shane, and fly back home. But I went with her this time because she was far along in pregnancy. And, you know, just the energy of it all gave me concern. The energy of the conversation leading up to the pickup gave me concern.
Yeah.
So I reached out to my father, who knows folks that operate out of LAX, law enforcement that operates out of LAX. And I just said, you know, I don't know what's going to happen during this pickup, but have someone on standby just in case.
Yeah.
And true to form, during the process of the drop-off, Shane just, out of the blue, says, "I'm not coming home," and takes off in the airport, OJ style, booking it.
Like in a Hertz commercial.
In a Hertz commercial. Running through the terminal, out of the doors of the terminal, into traffic of the arrival. So the police are there. They're asking what's going on. They're asking Claudia for the court order. They're asking for clarity.
Yeah.
Clarity to a situation that we just simply don't have. We don't know if this was preempted. We have a good suspicion that it was, based on all the elements that surround, you know. But regardless, we end up in an emergency hearing in LA County to revisit the custody of Shane. And, you know, I'll take a step back. Before that, it was our expectation that the police would enforce the court order that dictated he was to come home with us.
Yeah.
And because of his age at the time and his assertion that he didn't want to go home, they said, we have two choices. You guys can give permission, Claudia and I could give permission to allow him to go home with his dad and you guys can have your emergency hearing. Or if you don't agree with that, we have to put him in the system. We're going to have to put him in a foster care situation overnight until this matter is resolved if you don't agree to that. Now, obviously, we're not going to let that happen, so he goes home with his father that night.
Do you ever feel that during this time, did you ever feel like I didn't sign up for this?
Yes. Yes.
And so while you're feeling that with all this going on, like, or is it just overwhelming? Or did you be like, yo, I think I'm trying to Angela Bassett run through the freeway, heels in hand?
I felt very much out of control.
Yeah.
I felt out of control. I felt like I was in this surreal moment that I couldn't escape from.
Because you're watching the movie. You're not even a character in this movie.
I'm watching the movie.
And you can't leave.
I'm watching a movie, yes, but I'm a character in this movie. Still, that last statement is not accurate. I am very much an active character in this movie. And I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And I'm reaching out to friends and loved ones to let them know that I've had to shift my entire schedule around. And I'm having to explain a little bit of what's going on and why I'm landlocked in LA with no drawers, no toothbrush, no clue.
I was supposed to just get here and catch the next flight out.
We were supposed to
With
make
all
a
with
complete
with
U-turn.
with all of this going on, how are you dealing with your marriage? Because so much has gone on, right? So much has gone on from that event to you becoming a dad of 2 kids. What is the weight like that you feel you're having to carry between that and managing your marriage?
The weight is heavy. The weight is heavy. Because whether I like it or not, I'm starting to look at my wife crazy. This situation is beginning to tarnish, for better or for worse. And I have a little bit of embarrassment in saying that, but it's really how I felt.
That's how you felt.
It was tarnishing the view that I had of my wife, because here we are in relationship with this person that would not ordinarily, I can honestly say ordinarily, be
In your
on
orbit.
the docket of friends in my orbit, had it not been for the relationship that you established.
Yeah.
And I think some of that was also because of my family's influence and my family's perception outside looking in of what was going on. And I don't know that all of them were always saying the right things in that moment,
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest. And it began to weigh on me.
So you
that I was in this jacked up situation and that I may have made a bad choice.
You
Skip over the rule of not being involved with somebody with the kid. Like, now I got some baby daddy drama that I wouldn't have had if I would have just stuck to my rule.
Yeah. And so you're getting information from one group of people that you admire, which is not necessarily making you feel better. You got your own biological kids that you don't want to be part of the divorce story. You balancing that. Now you got your bonus child that you don't exactly know how to help and assist. and then you got your wife that's typically y'all on one accord and y'all can't find a chord.
We all are.
Everybody's
and we got a baby
off.
on the way, and that doesn't feel good.
How are you
on different pages when you got a new family member coming up? It's not going well, Larry. At this point, it's not going well.
Life is not good.
Life is not good at this point, and we're not even a good year into our marriage.
Yeah.
And I am completely overwhelmed. I am completely out of my element. And
how long were you feeling like that? How many was it like if you push play from LAX and you go to when Alencito was born? Like how often were you feeling like you were traveling rough seas?
Well, like you said at the onset, this is marriage. So that's an ebb and flow situation. Mm-hmm. So there were.
Did you feel more ebb than you felt flow?
There was more ebb than there was
in this
flow
season.
In this season, and I think my wife, if she was sitting here next to me, would be transparent in saying that we still recover to this day from that ebb.
Yeah.
In that period of time in our life, just because we still deal with a now 18-year-old challenging situation.
So here's the question.
Yeah.
Bro. Here's the question.
Yeah.
Because life is ebb and flow.
Yeah.
Business is ebb and flow.
Yeah.
You got ebb and flow in friendships. You got ebb and flow. You got, bro, you can go to the exact same restaurant and they can get it right sometimes. And the minute you bring a guest to this great restaurant, why you ebbing today? You supposed to keep flowing with me.
Supposed to be spot
now
on.
you done embarrassed me in front of company.
Yeah.
And they second guessing my taste buds.
I'm so glad that you said that, because there was a period of time where I was embarrassed.
So
I was embarrassed behind the decisions that I had made. I was embarrassed behind the position that I was in, and I wasn't feeling good about anything, let alone being a father, a natural father, a bonus father, a husband.
All of this is a journey.
Of the things.
So here's the question for you, right? Because I outside looking in, I would say right now you're in a season of flow. Today, you've survived the ebb, and ebb has highs and ebb has lows, and you might be just going high and low ebbing before you even get to a place. Flow meaning things are in some state of tranquility, of peace, of understanding. How did you survive that?
God, a lot of prayer, therapy with Claudia, therapy with myself, therapy with Shane, conversations with his father.
Did that ever evolve, or is it still rocky?
It's non-existent right now.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned, he's 18, so I think we were both pretty well pleased with the idea that, okay, maybe we don't need that.
Yeah, we don't have to.
We don't have to do that.
And that's okay.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Everything ain't for everybody. Right?
So you mentioned therapy. Mm-hmm. What else? And I guess, let's get this, let's be crystal clear. I'm a firm believer that prayer is critical. Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer that
prayer above all things.
It's critical. But everybody that listens to this podcast may not subscribe to prayer. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. So if we wanted to tell men other practical things that you felt for you were useful outside of. Now, it's weird, right? It's weird to say, well, outside of prayer, I found this, and that. Because for us, when we pray gives us the necessary tools and perspective. Mm-hmm. Some people might call that meditating, right? And they arrive from this place. But outside of therapy, what would you say was a tool enough for you to actually be in your position today to have an essence of flow?
So therapy can be many things. I'm not just talking about sitting down and talking to a licensed professional. I'm talking about, in addition to that,
Right.
sitting down with the right circle of people is part of that therapy for me.
So cigar sessions?
So cigar sessions. Sitting down with you, Larry. Sitting down with my uncle who has been in a similar predicament, you know, raising a bonus child who looks to him as her own father.
Yeah.
You know, talking to the folks that want to see my marriage win, that want to see me win.
Exercise?
And exercise. Exercise is therapy. I did some of my best running during the ebbs of our relationship.
Boy, I tell you, you run like Rocky Balboa.
Goddamn Balboa.
You Apollo Creed out there with his bad, man.
I'm rocking. I'm telling you.
You good boy.
In the gym, like, you know, that solitude.
You in the best
quiet
shape of your
time.
life, isn't you?
Yes.
Is it?
All those things, man. That's it. There's more than one way to do therapy. That would be my advice to other men. If you don't feel comfortable with the traditional means of therapy, find another venue. There is somebody out there in your circle that wants to see you win. Get with them, and you know who they are.
I would say what you're getting at is you chose to not go the journey alone.
Absolutely not.
Because when anything you do by yourself, you're not gonna win. It doesn't even in business. Like billionaires don't become billionaires by themselves. Millionaires don't become millionaires by themselves. Thousandaires don't become thousandaires by yourself. But the only thing you can do by yourself is be broke. You can be broke financially. You can be broke in relationships because you end up isolating yourself.
Listen, we were meant to be in community. We were born, and it is natural for us as human beings to desire community, to need community to survive and to thrive. And I put it all on that.
Yeah.
I put it all on my community. That doesn't mean going around and telling your business to everybody and anybody. But that does mean putting it out there to somebody that you can trust. That does mean taking time for yourself. That does mean maybe picking up a book.
Is that something that you would want people to walk away from this conversation?
Yeah. Don't live in your head, especially when it comes to something as critical as being head of your household. You got to live out loud. You got to live connected in order for this thing to work.
And we struggle with that,
And
living
we
in
struggle.
our head, boy. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
we take a full residence.
Yeah.
And then they come, what's wrong? Huh?
Yeah.
Nothing. You know, so
And it's even helpful just to say, I'm feeling bad, and I can't really articulate it. Mm-hmm. Just to put it out there that something is not right. Even if you just simply say that, it's better than saying nothing. I'm all good. Don't worry about me.
well, I tell you what, man. With that being said, I want you to know I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate the fact that you were willing to share your story. You know, because so many people have similar stories. They may not be circumstantially the same, but we can all glean from our stories. That's what makes books very cool. Documentaries so cool is because of the stories. You know, so I want to say thank you for sharing your story with me. And last but not least, man, if you trying to help God when he don't need no help, chances are you already lost. Peace.